Imagine this. You're sipping your morning tea, maybe reading the news or planning your day, when suddenly something feels off. Your arm feels heavy. You try to stand, but your leg won't move the way it should. You reach for your phone, but your fingers won't cooperate. You try to call for help, but the words you want to say get stuck somewhere between your brain and your mouth. And in those critical seconds, as confusion and fear settle in, life changes forever. This isn't just a frightening story. It's a reality that happens to millions of people each year. In fact, every 40 seconds, someone somewhere in the world experiences what's known as an ischemic stroke. It can come without warning, like a silent time bomb waiting to explode inside your brain. One moment, you feel fine. The next, you're caught in one of the most devastating medical emergencies there is. At Natural Healing Hub, we've always believed that true health begins with knowledge. And while we are passionate about natural healing and preventive wellness, some topics are so critical, so urgent, that understanding them could save your life or the life of someone you love. Today's topic is exactly that. We're taking a deep dive into ischemic strokes, how they happen, why they happen, what they do to your brain, and how you can protect yourself through a blend of modern science and natural health strategies. Now, you may be thinking, I'm healthy, I exercise, I eat well, strokes happen to other people. Not me. But here's a truth that might surprise you. According to the World Stroke Organization, 1 in 4 adults will experience a stroke in their lifetime. And while age is a factor, strokes are striking younger people more often than ever before. The lifestyle choices we make, the stress we carry, the subtle health signals we ignore, they all play a role in setting the stage for this medical emergency. The good news? Up to 80% of strokes are preventable. That's right, 80%. It's not about living in fear of what might happen. It's about being informed and proactive. Understanding the risk factors, like high blood pressure, smoking, diabetes, and high cholesterol, is your first line of defense. But there's more. Groundbreaking research shows that adopting certain natural practices, such as maintaining a healthy weight, eating a Mediterranean-style diet rich in omega-3s and antioxidants, engaging in regular movement, and managing stress through mindfulness and breathing techniques, can dramatically lower your risk of stroke. In this video, we'll explore the science behind ischemic strokes in a way that's easy to understand. Even if you're not a medical professional, we'll talk about the causes, from clogged arteries to blood clots, and explain why every second counts when stroke strikes. You'll learn how doctors diagnose and treat strokes. And we'll share powerful natural methods you can use to support brain health and circulation long before trouble starts. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of what an ischemic stroke really is, and more importantly, how to protect yourself and your loved ones from it. If you care about your brain health and want to empower yourself with life-saving knowledge, you're in the right place. So, stay with me until the end. This could be the most important information you hear today. And if you find this video helpful, be sure to support our community here at Natural Healing Hub by subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue to bring you valuable, life-changing insights grounded in both natural healing wisdom and modern medical science. Let's get started. Part 1. What is an ischemic stroke? Understanding the basics. Before we dive deeper into ischemic strokes, I think it's important to take a step back and understand the broader picture of what a stroke actually is. You see, when most people hear the word stroke, they tend to imagine a sudden collapse or slurred speech. But few truly grasp what's happening inside the body, or, more precisely, inside the brain, during one of these emergencies. So, let's clarify that first. A stroke is essentially an attack on the brain. It occurs when the blood supply to a part of the brain is suddenly interrupted or reduced. And without a steady flow of oxygen-rich blood, those delicate brain cells, billions of them, start to die. We're not talking about hours here. We're talking about minutes. Every minute counts. In fact, researchers often say, Time is brain. That's because, on average, nearly 2 million brain cells are lost for every minute a stroke goes untreated. It's sobering, isn't it? Now, there are two main types of strokes. And understanding the difference between them can make all the difference, especially when it comes to prevention and treatment. The first type is called a hemorrhagic stroke. This is when a weakened blood vessel bursts and bleeds into the brain. It's less common, making up about 13% of all strokes. But it's often more severe. Think of it as a sudden flood inside the brain, causing pressure and damage very quickly. But today, our focus is on the far more common type, the ischemic stroke. According to the CDC, ischemic strokes account for about 87% of all strokes. That's almost 9 out of 10 cases. So, if you or someone you care about is at risk, chances are this is the type you'll need to understand most. An ischemic stroke happens when something blocks the flow of blood through an artery that supplies the brain. The most common culprits? Blood clots and fatty deposits called atherosclerotic plaques. Over time, unhealthy lifestyle choices, like a poor diet high in processed foods, lack of physical activity, chronic stress, and smoking, can lead to the buildup of plaque in the arteries. This is a slow, silent process that often goes unnoticed, until one day, that plaque either narrows the artery to a critical point, or breaks loose, causing a blockage. That blockage stops oxygen and nutrients from reaching brain tissue. And when that happens, brain cells begin to die rapidly. From my experience working with clients who prioritize natural health, many people are shocked to learn that they may already have the underlying conditions that raise stroke risk, like high blood pressure or prediabetes, without even realizing it. These are often referred to as silent killers for a reason. They don't always cause obvious symptoms until it's too late. But here's something empowering. Knowledge is your first and best defense. Understanding what's happening inside your body helps you take action before a crisis strikes. And that's what we're here for at Natural Healing Hub, not just to raise awareness, but to guide you toward natural, effective lifestyle strategies that can protect your brain and your future. In a moment, we'll explore the specific risk factors and warning signs of ischemic strokes, so you can be prepared and proactive. But before we move on, if you're finding this information helpful so far, please take a second to support our growing community by subscribing to Natural Healing Hub. Together, we're building a space where knowledge and healing go hand in hand. Now, let's continue. Part 2. Anatomy of the brain and its blood supply, why every second counts. Now that we have a solid understanding of what an ischemic stroke is, let's take a step deeper into the extraordinary landscape of the brain itself. Because to truly grasp why strokes are so dangerous, and why every single second counts, we need to understand the delicate balance that keeps this remarkable organ alive and functioning. The human brain, although it only weighs about 3 pounds, consumes roughly 20% of the body's oxygen supply. That's astonishing when you think about it. Despite its size, it's an energy hog. Every single thought, every movement, every beat of your heart, even as you're sitting here watching this video, all of it relies on the brain's constant need for oxygen and nutrients, delivered efficiently by the bloodstream. So, how does this lifeline of blood reach the brain? It's a sophisticated system, one that nature has fine-tuned over millions of years. 4 major arteries are responsible for this critical delivery: 2 internal carotid arteries and 2 vertebral arteries. Picture these like highways transporting life-sustaining resources. The internal carotid arteries are responsible for feeding the front part of the brain, the anterior regions, which include areas in charge of movement, sensation, speech, and reasoning. Imagine these arteries as the main suppliers for the command centers that allow you to walk, talk, and process information. Then we have the vertebral arteries, which wind their way up through the spine and merge to form the basilar artery. This system supplies the posterior regions of the brain, the areas responsible for balance, coordination, and the vital life functions we often take for granted. We're talking about breathing, heart rate, and consciousness itself. Damage here can be catastrophic and immediate. What's fascinating is that these arteries connect through a circular arrangement called the Circle of Willis. You can think of it like a roundabout with multiple exits. If one road is blocked, there's a potential detour. In theory, it's an elegant backup system. But here's the catch: in about half the population, this system is incomplete or underdeveloped. That means for many of us, there's far less redundancy than we'd hope for. And when blood flow is interrupted, the damage can happen faster and be more widespread. Now, let's talk about why location matters. The brain isn't just a single organ doing one job. It's a symphony of specialized regions, each playing its part. If an ischemic stroke occurs in the frontal lobe, the consequences may include paralysis on one side of the body, trouble forming words, or difficulty solving problems. A stroke in the parietal lobe might affect your ability to feel sensations or understand spatial relationships. Imagine not knowing where your own arm is in space. If the temporal lobe is affected, you could lose memory or the ability to understand language. And a stroke in the occipital lobe can lead to partial or complete vision loss. The cerebellum, as we mentioned earlier, is in charge of coordination and balance. Damage there can make simple tasks like walking feel impossible. But perhaps the most devastating is damage to the brainstem, which can disrupt breathing, heartbeat regulation, and even consciousness itself. In many cases, strokes here are fatal. Personally, I find it awe-inspiring and humbling to reflect on how interconnected and fragile this system really is. It reminds me of something I often tell my clients. We spend so much of our lives worrying about external threats. But sometimes the greatest risks are happening silently within us. That's why early detection and prevention are so vital. The more we understand the inner workings of our brain and its blood supply, the more empowered we are to protect it. And here's something science tells us that gives me hope. According to recent studies, nearly 80% of strokes are preventable. That's right, 80%. And at Natural Healing Hub, we believe prevention begins with awareness, lifestyle changes, and embracing holistic approaches that nourish the body from the inside out. In just a moment, we'll explore the common causes of ischemic strokes, and more importantly, how you can take control of your health to reduce your risk dramatically. But if you found this information helpful so far, I invite you to subscribe to Natural Healing Hub and join our community of proactive, health-conscious individuals. We're all on this journey together, and there's so much more to discover. Let's move forward. Part 3. What causes an ischemic stroke? Breaking it down. Now that we've explored the brain's delicate reliance on blood flow, let's uncover what actually causes that flow to be interrupted in the first place. Understanding the root causes of an ischemic stroke isn't just an academic exercise. It's a powerful tool for prevention. When you know how and why these blockages form, you're better equipped to make choices that protect not only your brain, but your entire well-being. At its core, an ischemic stroke is a plumbing problem in the most sophisticated system nature ever designed. It's like a traffic jam in the brain's critical highway system. But instead of cars, we're dealing with clots and blockages that deprive vital tissues of oxygen. And just like with traffic, the reason for the jam can vary. Let's break down the major culprits. The first, and most common cause, is thrombosis. Imagine this. You have an artery in the brain, perhaps one of those critical carotid arteries we mentioned earlier. Over time, due to years of high blood pressure, elevated LDL cholesterol, smoking, or uncontrolled diabetes, the walls of that artery start to accumulate fatty plaques, a condition known as atherosclerosis. These plaques act like sticky debris along the inside of a pipe. They narrow the passageway, slowing blood flow. Eventually, the rough surface of a plaque can trigger the formation of a blood clot, a thrombus, that completely blocks the artery. Suddenly, everything downstream is cut off from oxygen. I often think of this as the slow, silent buildup of trouble. Many people live with significant atherosclerosis and don't even realize it until it's too late. A study from Harvard Health Publishing emphasized that poor diet and lack of physical activity are two of the biggest contributors to this process. Diets high in processed foods, refined sugars, and trans fats damage the blood vessels over time. On the flip side, adopting a Mediterranean-style diet, rich in leafy greens, healthy fats like olive oil, and omega-3 fatty acids, can dramatically lower your risk. It's something I personally recommend and practice in my own life. The second major cause is embolism. In this scenario, the clot doesn't form in the brain. It forms elsewhere, most commonly in the heart. This is especially true for people living with atrial fibrillation, an irregular heart rhythm that allows blood to pool and form clots in the heart's chambers. Those clots can break free, travel through the bloodstream, and lodge in one of the brain's arteries. This kind of embolic stroke often strikes without warning and can be devastating. Clinical insights from the Cleveland Clinic suggest that people with atrial fibrillation who take anticoagulants such as warfarin or newer direct oral anticoagulants, DOACs, can reduce their risk of embolic stroke by up to 70%. That's an enormous difference, and a reminder that modern medicine and natural health approaches can complement each other beautifully. While pharmaceuticals have their place, they work best when combined with lifestyle strategies like maintaining a healthy weight, staying physically active, and managing stress levels. The third cause is something less frequently discussed, but equally important: systemic hypoperfusion. This happens when there's a sudden and dramatic drop in blood pressure, starving the brain of oxygenated blood. It's often seen in cases of severe heart failure, massive bleeding, or overwhelming infections like sepsis. Unlike the localized blockages of thrombosis or embolism, hypoperfusion impacts the entire brain, leading to widespread damage. It's a stark reminder of how fragile our systems are in the face of sudden trauma or severe illness. And then there's venous thrombosis, which, while rarer, deserves our attention. This occurs when the veins responsible for draining blood from the brain become blocked, often due to clotting disorders, dehydration, or certain infections. I find it fascinating that while arterial strokes get most of the spotlight, venous strokes can be equally destructive if not recognized early. Women who are pregnant or taking certain hormonal medications, as well as people with genetic clotting conditions, are at higher risk. So why does all of this matter? Because understanding these mechanisms is the first step toward prevention. When you know your risk factors, whether it's high blood pressure, atrial fibrillation, or a family history of clotting disorders, you can take proactive steps. This might mean getting regular checkups, embracing a heart-healthy diet, quitting smoking, or even something as simple as drinking more water and staying active throughout the day. At Natural Healing Hub, we believe prevention starts with education and small, daily actions that add up over time. As someone who's seen firsthand the impact of stroke in family members and clients, I can tell you, it's worth every effort to keep those arteries clean and that blood flowing freely. In our next section, we'll explore the early warning signs of an ischemic stroke, what to look for, and when to act. Because if there's one truth in stroke care, it's this: time lost is brain lost. But before we continue, if you're finding this information helpful, don't forget to subscribe to Natural Healing Hub. Together, we can build a healthier future, one choice at a time. Let's keep going. Part 4. Warning signs and symptoms you must know. Let's take a moment to really let this sink in. Time is brain. I want you to remember that phrase because it couldn't be more accurate or more urgent. According to the American Stroke Association, every single second after a stroke begins, about 1.9 million neurons die. Think about that. Neurons, the very cells that make you, your thoughts, your memories, your ability to speak, move, and experience the world, are being lost at an astonishing rate. It's no exaggeration to say that minutes can mean the difference between recovery and lifelong disability, or even life and death. That's why recognizing the warning signs of a stroke isn't just helpful, it's essential. This knowledge could literally save your life, or the life of someone you love. I've had conversations with people who told me they thought something was wrong, but waited it out, hoping it would go away. And I get it. No one wants to panic over nothing. But when it comes to strokes, hesitation is dangerous. If something feels off, it's always better to act fast. And speaking of fast, that's actually one of the best tools we have for remembering the classic signs of a stroke. FAST is an easy-to-remember acronym, and it stands for F. Face drooping. Ask the person to smile. Does one side of their face sag or look uneven? Arm weakness. Ask them to raise both arms. Does one arm drift downward? Can they lift it at all? S. Speech difficulty. Have them repeat a simple sentence. Is their speech slurred or strange? Do they seem confused? T. Time to call emergency services immediately. Don't wait. Don't second guess. Just call. In countries like the United States, you dial 911. But wherever you are in the world, knowing your local emergency number and using it promptly is critical. The faster emergency treatment begins, the better the chances of survival and recovery. But there's more to the story. While FAST covers the major, more recognizable signs, strokes can also present with additional, sometimes subtle, symptoms. These are just as serious and should never be ignored. For example, sudden numbness or weakness in the face, arm, or leg, especially on one side of the body, is often an early sign. This can feel like a limb has just gone to sleep. But if it's not resolving in a minute or two, it's time to take it seriously. Confusion or trouble understanding speech is another red flag. If you find yourself, or someone else, suddenly unable to comprehend simple sentences, or struggling to form coherent words, that's a major warning sign. One of my close friends once told me he felt foggy and had trouble following a basic conversation. But he brushed it off as fatigue. Hours later, he was in the hospital recovering from a minor stroke that could have been much worse if he'd waited any longer. Vision problems are another symptom that many people miss. Sudden blurred vision or loss of sight in one or both eyes can indicate a stroke. It might feel like a dark curtain falling over your field of vision, or as though you're looking through water. Then there's dizziness, loss of balance, or sudden difficulty walking. The cerebellum and brainstem, which control balance and coordination, can be affected during a stroke, causing vertigo or a spinning sensation. If you suddenly feel unsteady on your feet, or have trouble with coordination, especially if accompanied by other signs, that's a red flag. And finally, a severe headache that comes out of nowhere with no clear cause can also signal a stroke. While this symptom is more commonly associated with hemorrhagic strokes, it can still occur with ischemic strokes in some cases. If it's the worst headache you've ever had, don't wait it out. Get help. I can't stress this enough. When in doubt, act. I always tell my viewers, friends, and family the same thing. Don't worry about feeling embarrassed if it turns out to be nothing. Medical professionals would much rather rule out a stroke than see you arrive too late for life-saving treatment. And here's a critical piece of insight from the latest research. Strokes can present differently in women than in men. Women may experience general weakness, fatigue, shortness of breath, or sudden changes in mental state like confusion or agitation. These signs can be more subtle and easily dismissed, but they are just as serious. So here's my personal take. Be your own best advocate. Listen to your body. Pay attention to these signals, no matter how mild they seem at first. Strokes don't wait, and neither should you. As we continue, we'll explore how strokes are diagnosed and treated. But before we move on, I want to remind you that knowledge like this saves lives. If this information resonates with you, or if you know someone who could benefit from it, please consider subscribing to Natural Healing Hub. Together, we're building a community that prioritizes health, prevention, and empowerment. Let's keep going. There's so much more you can do to protect yourself and those you love. Part 5. How doctors diagnose an ischemic stroke. When someone shows up at the emergency room with stroke symptoms, there's one golden rule every healthcare professional follows: time lost is brain lost. Every minute that passes, more brain cells die, an estimated 1.9 million neurons per minute, according to the American Stroke Association. So, from the moment you arrive, the clock is ticking, and everything happens fast. The first thing doctors do is conduct an initial assessment. It's a quick, but comprehensive evaluation aimed at getting a snapshot of your neurological function. They'll check your level of consciousness, whether you're fully awake, drowsy, or unresponsive. Then, they move on to test motor skills. Can you lift both arms? Or is one weak? Is your grip strong, or floppy? They'll also check sensory responses, whether you can feel touch on both sides of your body. This is crucial, as asymmetry in sensation or movement often points directly to stroke. Another tool doctors rely on during this initial phase is something called the NIH Stroke Scale, or NIHSS for short. It's a standardized method to measure the severity of a stroke. It scores you on different functions, like speech, vision, and motor abilities, to give doctors a baseline of how bad the stroke might be. A higher score generally means more severe impairment, which helps guide treatment decisions. Personally, I think this scoring system is incredibly valuable, not just for immediate triage, but also for tracking recovery down the line. But an exam alone isn't enough. The next step is imaging. The very first scan you'll likely undergo is a non-contrast CT scan of the head. Why? Because doctors need to rule out a hemorrhagic stroke before giving clot-busting drugs. If there's bleeding in the brain, certain treatments for ischemic stroke, like TPA, tissue plasminogen activator, could make things much worse. CT scans are fast, widely available, and typically the go-to first test. If the CT scan rules out bleeding, but doesn't give enough detail about what's happening inside the brain, doctors often order an MRI. MRIs are more sensitive and can show areas of brain tissue that have already been damaged due to lack of blood flow. While MRIs take longer and aren't always available in emergencies, they can provide a more accurate picture, which is key for planning the next steps. Then there's vascular imaging, CT, angiography or MR angiography. These tests use contrast dye to highlight the blood vessels in your brain and neck. They help pinpoint exactly where the blockage is, whether it's in one of the carotid arteries or deeper inside the brain's smaller vessels. In my opinion, seeing the vascular anatomy in real time like this is one of modern medicine's great achievements. It's like turning the lights on in a dark room. You can suddenly see the problem clearly and know where to act. But stroke diagnosis isn't just about pictures. Blood tests are also critical. Doctors will check for clotting disorders to understand whether your blood is prone to forming clots. They'll also check blood sugar levels, because extremely high or low glucose can mimic stroke symptoms. Infections, like sepsis, and electrolyte imbalances can sometimes trigger stroke-like signs, or complicate recovery. So those are also screened right away. What's interesting here is how all these tests work together, almost like pieces of a puzzle. One test alone doesn't tell the whole story. But when you combine a neurological exam, imaging, and blood tests, doctors can make a fast and accurate diagnosis, and in stroke care, that can mean the difference between a full recovery and permanent disability. At Natural Healing Hub, we often emphasize prevention and holistic approaches. But I have to say, in the case of acute ischemic stroke, modern emergency medicine truly shines. Knowing what happens behind the scenes can not only ease some of the fear, but also highlight why acting fast, calling 911 immediately when you suspect a stroke is absolutely critical. Part 6. Treatment, the race against time. When it comes to treating an ischemic stroke, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Every minute counts. Time isn't just money, it's brain cells, memories, speech, mobility. Once you or a loved one arrives at the hospital, the race is on. Treatments are aimed at reopening blocked arteries as quickly and safely as possible. Because the sooner blood flow is restored, the better the chances of survival and recovery. One of the most well-known emergency treatments is intravenous thrombolysis, specifically using a medication called tissue plasminogen activator, or TPA. Think of TPA as a kind of medical drain cleaner. It dissolves the clot that's blocking blood flow to the brain. But there's a critical catch. It has to be given within a very tight window of time. According to guidelines followed by stroke centers across the US, TPA is most effective when administered within 3 hours of symptom onset. Though in certain cases, it can be extended to 4.5 hours. And this isn't just a random rule. Studies have consistently shown that the earlier TPA is given, the greater the chance of reversing symptoms and reducing permanent disability. WebMD highlights that patients treated within the optimal time frame are significantly more likely to regain independence. But it's important to understand that TPA isn't without risks. Because it works by thinning the blood and breaking up clots, it can also increase the risk of bleeding, especially in the brain. That's why doctors follow strict protocols, including brain scans and blood tests, to make sure it's the right option for each patient. For patients who either miss that narrow window for TPA, or have large vessel blockages where TPA alone may not be enough, there's another life-saving option: endovascular thrombectomy. This procedure is a game-changer, using advanced imaging to guide them. Neurointerventionalists thread a catheter, essentially a tiny tube, through an artery in the groin, all the way up to the brain. They then use specialized devices, sometimes called stent retrievers, to physically grab and pull out the clot. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. Like fishing out a cork that's plugging up a drain. This procedure is typically offered within 6 hours of stroke onset. But newer studies, like those published in the New England Journal of Medicine, show it can be effective up to 24 hours in carefully selected patients. That's an exciting development because it gives hope to people who may not have made it to the hospital in time for TPA. But treatment doesn't stop once the clot is cleared. Supportive care is just as vital in stabilizing a stroke patient and preventing further damage. Blood pressure management is key. Too high, and there's a risk of brain swelling or bleeding. Too low, and the brain might not get enough blood flow to the areas still recovering. Controlling blood sugar is another crucial factor. Hyperglycemia, or high blood sugar, can worsen brain injury after a stroke, which is why it's closely monitored and treated in stroke patients, even in those without diabetes. And then there's basic but essential care, making sure the patient stays well hydrated and receives enough oxygen, especially if they're struggling to breathe on their own. From my perspective, it's nothing short of miraculous how far acute stroke treatment has come in just the last couple of decades. What once felt like an automatic death sentence, or a guarantee of lifelong disability, can now, in many cases, be reversed or dramatically improved, if the right steps are taken quickly enough. And that's why I always emphasize, whether on this channel or in personal conversations, knowing the warning signs and acting fast is half the battle won. Because with stroke, the difference between life and death, or a full recovery and permanent disability, comes down to minutes. Let me know if you'd like to move forward into the next phase. What happens after these acute treatments? And how recovery and rehabilitation shape the long-term outcome. Part 7. Long-term treatment and rehabilitation. Once the immediate danger of an ischemic stroke has passed, and the clot has been dealt with, the real journey begins, the journey of recovery and prevention. It's important to understand that surviving a stroke is only the first battle. What comes next is a comprehensive plan aimed at preventing another event and helping the individual regain as much independence and quality of life as possible. A critical component of long-term care is what doctors call secondary prevention. Essentially, it's all about minimizing the risk of having another stroke, which statistics tell us is a very real possibility. In fact, according to the American Heart Association, about 1 in 4 stroke survivors will experience another stroke in their lifetime. To lower that risk, doctors typically prescribe medications like antiplatelet drugs. Aspirin is often the go-to, but in some cases, clopidogrel, or even a combination of both, is recommended to help prevent new clots from forming. If the stroke was caused by a cardioembolic event, such as atrial fibrillation, anticoagulants like warfarin, or newer direct oral anticoagulants DOACs, such as apixaban or rivaroxaban, are commonly prescribed. These medications help prevent blood clots from forming in the heart and traveling to the brain. Another important piece of the puzzle is managing cholesterol levels. That's where statins come in. Medications like atorvastatin or rosuvastatin are typically prescribed not only to lower LDL cholesterol, but also to stabilize plaque buildup in the arteries, reducing the chances of a future clot breaking loose. Some people hesitate to take statins because of concerns about side effects. But in my personal experience, and backed by extensive studies, including those published in The Lancet, the benefits far outweigh the risks for most stroke survivors. Of course, no medication plan is complete without meaningful lifestyle changes. Adopting a heart-healthy Mediterranean diet can make a huge difference. This diet emphasizes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, fish rich in omega-3 fatty acids, and healthy fats like olive oil. I often tell people it's not about going on a temporary diet, it's about making sustainable changes. Adding regular exercise, whether it's walking, swimming, or yoga, not only helps control weight and blood pressure, but also boosts mood and overall brain health. Quitting smoking is non-negotiable, as tobacco smoke damages blood vessels and raises clotting risks. And while moderate alcohol consumption may be safe for some, limiting or eliminating it is generally recommended to avoid raising blood pressure and stroke risk. Rehabilitation is another crucial aspect of long-term recovery. Physical therapy often starts as soon as possible to help stroke survivors regain motor function and rebuild strength. It's amazing how targeted exercises, guided by a skilled physical therapist, can retrain the brain and body to work together again. Speech therapy is equally vital, especially for those who struggle with communication or swallowing difficulties after a stroke. Language skills and speech can often be recovered with time and practice. Occupational therapy focuses on helping individuals relearn essential skills for daily living, whether that's dressing, cooking, or managing finances. And let's not forget the emotional and psychological side of recovery. Post-stroke depression and anxiety are more common than many people realize. According to a study published in JAMA Psychiatry, nearly 1/3 of stroke survivors experience depression. This is where psychological support, whether through counseling, support groups, or even medication when needed, becomes a lifeline. Recovery is as much about mental health as it is about physical healing. In my opinion, stroke rehabilitation isn't just about getting back to normal. It's about building a new normal that prioritizes health, prevention, and resilience. Every small gain matters, and with the right support system, dedication, and medical guidance, stroke survivors can lead fulfilling, meaningful lives. Let me know if you're ready to move on to the next section. We could explore the role of family caregivers, or dive into cutting-edge research on stroke recovery and prevention. Part 8. Natural and holistic approaches to stroke prevention. At Natural Healing Hub, we strongly believe that prevention is the most powerful medicine. While modern medicine offers incredible tools to treat strokes after they happen, We prefer to focus on what we can do today to prevent them in the first place. And when it comes to stroke prevention, there's so much within our control, especially when we take a natural, holistic approach that honors both science and ancient wisdom. One of the most impactful strategies I've seen is adopting an anti-inflammatory diet. Chronic inflammation is like a slow-burning fire in the body, quietly damaging blood vessels over time, setting the stage for atherosclerosis, and ultimately increasing the risk of ischemic stroke. That's why we emphasize foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids. Flax seeds and walnuts are staples I recommend often. Not only are they easy to add to smoothies or salads, but they pack a serious anti-inflammatory punch. And if you enjoy seafood, wild-caught salmon is one of the best choices out there. It's rich in omega-3s, which have been shown in numerous studies, including a large meta-analysis published in the journal Stroke, to lower stroke risk significantly. Antioxidants are another key player. They help neutralize the free radicals that cause oxidative stress, a major contributor to vascular damage. Adding more berries, like blueberries and raspberries, and dark leafy greens such as spinach or kale, to your daily diet is a simple but effective way to flood your system with these protective compounds. Harvard Health has reported that Mediterranean-style diets, which are naturally high in antioxidants and healthy fats, can reduce stroke risk by up to 30%. That's a huge incentive to rethink what's on your plate each day. Of course, no discussion about natural prevention is complete without mentioning herbal supplements. Now, I always stress the importance of working with a healthcare professional before starting any new supplements, especially if you're already taking prescription medications like blood thinners. That said, certain herbs have shown promising results. Ginkgo biloba is one example. It's often used in traditional medicine to support brain health and may enhance blood circulation in the brain. Turmeric, with its powerful active compound, curcumin, has long been celebrated for its anti-inflammatory properties. Personally, I add a dash of turmeric to my morning tea. It's a small habit that makes a big difference. And let's not forget garlic extract. Not only does it help lower blood pressure, but research published in the Journal of Nutrition also highlights its role in reducing cholesterol levels, both of which are critical in stroke prevention. But we can't ignore the mind-body connection. In fact, I'd argue that stress management is just as important as diet and supplements. Chronic stress elevates cortisol levels, increases blood pressure, and promotes inflammation, all of which can make blood vessels more vulnerable to damage. That's where mindfulness practices like yoga and meditation come in. Even just 10 minutes of deep breathing or guided meditation a day can lower stress hormones and blood pressure. The Cleveland Clinic underscores the role of mindfulness in reducing the risk of chronic diseases, stroke included. I've found that incorporating mindful movement like yoga or Tai Chi not only helps calm the mind but also improves circulation and balance, which is especially important for older adults. Ultimately, what we do daily matters more than what we do occasionally. A holistic lifestyle that blends anti-inflammatory nutrition, supportive herbal therapies, and stress management isn't just good for your brain, it's good for your entire being. And here at Natural Healing Hub, we believe prevention is the greatest form of healing. Conclusion: take control of your brain health today. And there you have it. We've just covered a comprehensive look at ischemic stroke, from what it is, how it happens, the warning signs you need to watch out for, and how it's treated, all the way to natural and holistic approaches that can help prevent it. Now, if you've stayed with me all the way through this video, I want to say thank you. You've taken a powerful step today toward protecting not only your brain health but also the health of those you care about. And that's something to be proud of. So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, if there's one thing I hope sticks with you, it's this: when it comes to stroke, every second counts. We talked earlier about the phrase, time is brain. And that couldn't be more true. According to the American Stroke Association, Nearly 2 million brain cells die every minute a stroke goes untreated. That's why recognizing the signs, face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulties, and knowing it's time to call 911 immediately, can quite literally save a life. But beyond that urgent response, there's the ongoing work we can all do every single day to prevent strokes from ever happening in the first place. And that's where lifestyle comes into play. As we mentioned earlier, things like following an anti-inflammatory Mediterranean-style diet, exercising regularly, managing stress through mindfulness practices like meditation and yoga, and even using time-tested herbal supplements under professional guidance, can make a huge difference. Personally, I believe one of the most powerful shifts anyone can make is simply becoming more mindful of their daily choices. What you eat, how you move, how you handle stress, these things may seem small in the moment. But over time, they add up, and they can either protect you from disease or push you toward it. I know that sounds blunt, but it's true, and the good news? You have the power to choose. Another important lesson is that modern medicine and natural healing don't have to exist on opposite sides. At Natural Healing Hub, we're all about combining the best of both worlds. If there's a medication that can save a life, like TPA or anticoagulants for stroke prevention, we support that 100%. But alongside those treatments, we also believe in nourishing the body and mind with nature's tools. Herbs like ginkgo biloba, turmeric, and garlic aren't meant to replace medication, but to complement it, filling in the gaps that modern medicine sometimes leaves behind. And let's not forget the emotional and psychological side of healing. Stroke survivors often face depression and anxiety. That's why emotional support, whether through counseling, support groups, or simply mindful connection with others, is just as critical as physical rehabilitation. It's all connected. If you found value in today's video, I'd encourage you to take action right now. First, make sure you're subscribed to Natural Healing Hub. We're constantly sharing new insights, backed by science and enriched by natural wisdom, to help you live a healthier, longer life. When you subscribe, you won't miss a single video. And trust me, we've got some great ones coming up. We'll be diving deeper into topics like natural ways to lower blood pressure, boost brain power, and support heart health without relying solely on prescription meds. Second, if this video resonated with you, share it. Share it with a friend, a family member, or anyone you care about, especially if they're at risk for stroke. You never know. The information you shared today could help someone recognize a stroke in time, or motivate them to make healthier lifestyle choices. And that could change their life forever. Finally, I just want to say how grateful I am that you've taken the time to invest in your health today. In a world where we're constantly distracted and pulled in a million directions, it's not always easy to focus on what truly matters. But you did, and that's a huge step. Your brain, and your future self, will thank you. Before we wrap up, here's a quick recap of what we covered today. First, we learned how strokes happen, especially ischemic strokes, which account for nearly 90% of all strokes. We broke down the risk factors: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and smoking, and how they contribute to clot formation and blocked arteries. We also talked about the critical importance of early recognition, with FAST being the easiest way to remember those life-saving signs. We explored how doctors diagnose strokes quickly and efficiently through neurological exams, imaging like CT and MRI scans, and lab tests to find the root cause. Then we discussed the emergency treatments, thrombolytic drugs like TPA and life-saving procedures like thrombectomy, and how fast intervention can mean the difference between full recovery and lasting disability. But most importantly, we focused on prevention, because while treatments are improving every day, preventing a stroke before it happens is always the better option. We covered holistic strategies like anti-inflammatory nutrition, herbal supplements with proper guidance, and stress reduction techniques that have been scientifically proven to lower stroke risk. If you want to dive deeper into any of these topics, check out the links in the description below. We've included resources, studies, and practical guides to help you take the next step in your health journey. Thank you again for watching. Remember, taking control of your health doesn't have to be overwhelming. It's about small, consistent changes that lead to big results over time. And we're here to help you every step of the way. Until next time, stay healthy, stay mindful, and keep striving for your best self. This is Natural Healing Hub, and I'll see you in the next video.